Welcome to Soundbreaker. In today's episode, we're talking to Eric Tan, who is the creative director at Sway. Eric, thank you for joining us today. And for all listeners who might not be familiar with you, could you please introduce yourself before we really dive into it? I'm sure it's going to be extremely insightful and informative.
Sure. Thanks, Bob. Thanks for
My
having me on
pleasure.
the show. And
Yes.
the brief background is that I've been in the entertainment industry for over 24 years now.
Uh-huh.
And I was very lucky enough to straddle both the record label side and the game publishing side. So I was at all three major labels. So Warner Music in London, then came back to Hong Kong for Universal Music, APAC, and then most recently with Sony Music in China. But
Hmm.
I also had a stint in the game publishing side. So I was with EA in 2010, and that led me to run Gameloft in China. And then most recently, I was with Riot Games as the head of music APAC, being able to do all these big music activations that you've may have heard of, for Valorant, League, Arcane, as well as our virtual artist initiatives as well.
Amazing. Eric, tell you the truth, I don't know where to start because your accolade or your achievement, a massive list. And I'm just going to start from somewhere. So for our audience or listeners or viewers on Soundbreaker could really get the real insights of Eric Tan and what he
Okay.
accomplished and the path that you carved for yourself in the music industry. Um, Let's talk about at EA. What challenges, let's say, did you face working with Tencent and Apple? Tencent is one of the biggest distributors in music distributors for, I would say, aggregators, and they own also platforms in China,
Oh yeah,
in mainland China.
they
Yeah,
they they, they own quite a big piece of the game industry
they do.
and also the music industry as well.
Yeah. What
But
platforms, if you don't mind me asking, they own? Tencent.
so Tencent, their bread and butter is really their gaming business. They're a game publisher at its core. I mean, they started in a messaging service and then went on to game publishing, and then basically they've pretty much monopolized the whole market there. They are the go-to choice when it comes to publishing games in China. But they also operate music services. So Tencent Music Entertainment, which encompasses QQ Music, Kugo, Kuwo, all these local DSPs are part of the Tencent Music Entertainment as well. So even though Tencent Music Entertainment actually is its own entity, it's a listed company. But yes, like Tencent is the mothership, the main holding company that holds both the gaming business and the music business as well.
So let's talk about the challenges that you faced working for them and for Apple.
So
Some
we,
of the challenges. We
yeah,
don't want to go deep into it, but some of this so for our viewers.
sure, Bob. I think on Tencent, I would split up both the project management team level and then like the senior kind of more senior commercial level. I would say working with the project management team has been pretty smooth. I think everyone is like a gamer. Everyone's kind of passionate to want to bring these games into China. So in my case with EA, it was publishing like Need for Speed or publishing like FIFA, the football or soccer game into the Tencent platform. I would say probably the commercial negotiation side was a little bit tough in that they took a very hard stance on, what they wanted or what they wanted or not willing to compromise on things like server requirements, data privacy requirements, the revenue share, and they really kept their algorithm close to their chest. Where we're trying to ask them like, how do we get our game like charted better compared to other games? You never get a straight answer. So yeah, it's these things that kind of made it tough. Apple, on the other hand, they're relatively easier in the sense that they're all about consistency, right? So
Yes.
this is our process. This applies to everyone. And yeah, and then they were relatively kind of more easygoing in terms of giving us featuring, editor's choice featuring on their app store. But then again, I was very lucky. I think I was part of that kind of golden days of kind of the beginning of the growth of the gaming industry. So yeah, no, it was a good experience.
Eric, can you tell us about your strategies you use to grow, game lofts in China from 3 to 30 in 2 years, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many factors at play there. But I joined at a time where I think where Gameloft was trying to plan out this bigger plan to self-publish games. So a bit of context, in order to publish games in China, usually you work with a game publisher, like a Tencent or a NetEase or iDreamSky, just to name a few. But I think the Gameloft's culture is that they wanted to kind of own their own distribution, own their own
Hmm.
billing, and then so we were basically rolling out this initiative to self publish. But as you may know, like China is very very different when it comes to just distribution channels, and then or marketing channels. YouTube is banned, Facebook is banned, Twitter is banned, and you really need to kind of deal with new channels in order to distribute in China. And that's what happened basically. We started as a team of four. It's literally me as the GM, if you like, and then underneath me there's my head of iOS, and then there's my head of Android, and then there's a head of marketing. um, but then, in order to self-publish, you need to service like 20 accounts in order to get that kind of 80% share of the market. So just distribution alone, we had to like grow like 10 to 12 persons,
Hmm.
handling the key accounts. So yeah, it was a combination of all these factors that contributed us to like how we have to go from like four to like a head count of 30, simply because we made that decision to self-publish as opposed to working with the publisher.
Pretty ballsy move. I like that, and you got it done,
we we
Eric.
got it done, but we had to retract like afterwards. But yeah, that's a story for another day.
Eric, how did you also were you involved in launching Marvel games in China?
Yeah.
Yes. How did I'm sure there was some challenges, some exciting. So how this whole thing came about?
Again, we were very very lucky at the time. This is like the beginning of the 2010s, and I think the at the time Chinese appetite for Western movies was at its peak. There wasn't that much kind of geopolitical tension, and then
Hmm.
so generally like a lot of these big IPs from the West were well received. But in terms of how we distribute and market, at Gameloft we work very closely with our centralized marketing folks in the HQ in Paris.
Hmm.
Just to align of like what to say, what not to say, what are the selling points, etc., etc. That was relatively straightforward, and then locally we would engage with gaming communities and the gaming press to help to get more recognition with the game by the time that it's published on the Apple app stores or Android app stores.
Amazing. What made Minion Rush a very big hit in China?
But yeah, that's a thanks for raising that. That's actually one of my personal favorites.
I'm sure.
I would say probably contributed to two factors. One is that Despicable Me one was never shown in China, but the government actually gave the green light to part two, right? And then that was the same time as when we were releasing the game as well. So we had that big support, right? Like and but from the game's perspective, we really invested a lot on culturalizations, right? Um, Not getting into too kind of detailed kind of gaming mechanics,
Yeah.
but we changed several aspects of the game. So things like file size, we shrunk it down from what is like a 1 gigabyte game. No, sorry, I think it was an 800 megabyte game. We shrunk it down to like 30 megabytes because at
Wow.
the time, data was still very very expensive, and your app size like matters a lot as to whether someone's going to download it or not. So we shrunk the file size. We adjusted the difficulty. Like I think through our data and research, a lot of people couldn't pass the round one boss, so we made it
Hmm.
easy. We made it
Hmm.
easier, and then we did things like instead of soft currency, like I don't know whatever, like buy 800 bananas with 199 or 299. We changed it into like an arcade style, like like what we one if you run and you die
Yeah.
in the game, you can just continue with like equivalent of one kwai renminbi, like whatever, like 20 cents or something. So it's like kind of arcade style, like continuation, and all these things contributed to the success of the game. Which turned out we were able to generate like 30 million downloads in the
Wow.
first 3 months, and then the game's China sales as a proportion of the global sales became 40%. So it was a very successful project in that light.
40% of global sale just in
That's
China.
right. That's right. Correct.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Let's talk about your vision for Fifth Journey and how did you secure big studio backing for it?
Phew. Do we have to? No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't my finest, but yeah, like when I started Fifth Journey, it was 2014.
Yeah.
Lots of VC investors' money was pouring into the mobile gaming industry,
Yeah.
and we had the vision of like when you look at the film industry, there are like the concept of windowing, right? Like you have the feature film, and then like a few months later, it becomes home video or streaming now, as we all know it, and then you have your, I don't know, whatever consumer products. We initially had this vision that, what, I think every big tentpole movie should have a simultaneous game release, right? Like, but so that was the thesis. That was the naivete of it. But yeah, no,
Yes.
nonetheless, we were able to got a lot of support, from the big studios. And again, it's timing, right? This is the time where I think Hollywood studios was really looking to China as a big distribution play,
Mm.
also as a financing play, right? So I think if you were building any companies at the time where you can kind of spin your story and that you kind of play in that nexus of Hollywood China, then you're in a very advantageous position to either raise funds or get strategic partnerships.
Well, how did you manage to raise $7 million for Fifth Journey?
Hustling, Bob, hustling.
Good old
Yeah,
hustling. No,
good
no,
old
no.
hustling.
That's it.
Good
Nothing
old hus.
special.
Nothing
Yes.
special, but I would say, yeah, it's really broken down by generous support from friends and family, first and foremost, and then and I guess that's we're now kind of touching on the advantages of being in Hong Kong, which is there's a lot of family offices, and also being at the financial center, that
Hmm.
is Hong Kong, gives you access to these resources. Yeah, but yeah, lots
I've
of
noticed,
lots of hustling.
family offices obviously is the trend that's been happening in the past year, some years. Obviously, it's new, but they seem to invest a lot in entertainment. I'm noticing in family offices. They're involved in tech startups also.
Yeah,
They've been kind of family offices. They would probably choose more conservative kind of, but they've been taking that side also, being involved in kind of new sectors, tech sector and investments, entertainment and gaming and all of that.
yeah, for sure.
Yes. What challenges did you face working on Pacific Rim and Hong Kong versus Godzilla games?
Yeah, no, I would say, I think in terms of like the actual developing or co-developing and publishing the games was a very joyful experience, and working, our partners were Legendary Pictures at the time were just fantastic.
Hmm.
But I think what was tough is that at that time we were going from development to publishing, and that was really really tough, for the company internally. I think, ambition wise, we wanted to be a developer, but I think one of the mistakes now looking back is that we sold to the investors of more of a publisher business model. So yeah, it wasn't going to be that sustainable, in that sense. So in that sense, it was that was probably one of the toughest period on my business life, to
Interesting.
navigate
And
that. Yeah.
yes, let's talk about your transition from games, which is you spent a lot of time in it and you're successful at it, to music at Sony?
Well, I actually, just now on my introduction, I actually started at music, right? Like, I had my first job with Warner Music in London, and then Universal Music, uh, Asia, before going. So in that sense, it was more of a homecoming, for me. It was going back, but it was I rejoined the music industry at a time where, the industry just changed so much. When I left the record industry, there was still CDs, or it was the beginning of the iTunes download era.
So
By
you're
the
talking
time
about, I would say, late '90s, early 2000.
early 2000s, yeah.
Yes.
And when I rejoined the music industry, there was already like Spotify, like Apple Music, uh, and Tencent Music Entertainment Netty. So I had to kind of relearn. I had to like relearn the ropes a bit, and that was tough. And plus, in addition to that, you know, despite like having shipped 3 games at Fifth Journey, we still couldn't withstand the pressures that we're getting from rising marketing costs and rising production costs, and the business wasn't really able to kind of continue on from there. So it was very, I personally got pretty depressed, from the experience. So it was quite a tough period, even though the glass half full version of the story is that I've rejoined the music industry, but I think I haven't quite recovered, from not being able to make my own startup company successful. Yeah, so it was tough in that sense. Yeah.
Let's talk about you. How did you manage to close the deal, or deals like Michael Jackson and Alan Walker partnerships? These are pretty hefty deals. I know you raised a lot of money. Again, you keep taking on some really high intense challenges, and you managed to get them to the finish line.
Yeah, Bob, you can probably tell that I'm a very, very humble guy. Like I always like, for me, I think on top of my head, I would say it's really a function of the growing economy of China at the
Yeah.
time, right? And remember, this is pre-COVID, and pre-COVID, like China was just like a monster. It was like the market was just like growing like at a phenomenal rate. But I need to really give credit to the brands and partnership team at Sony Music China. Who had a very robust, Rolodex of brand partners at the time, right? Including the film that wanted to license the one that licensed the sync license for Michael Jackson's "Heal the World." And with respect to Alan Walker, he's just a pro. Like him and Gunther, the manager at the time, just really saw the potential in China, and then they did their time. They actually spent a lot of time in China, and through that there was a trickle effect of the opportunities that was brought onto him. So yeah, it was at least I wish I could say like I'm some kind of sly deal maker, but I think it's a really a combination of these different factors that led to these partnerships being able to be executed.
And how did you manage to bring Jackson Wang and Amber Leo
Yeah.
to Riot Games?
Again, interesting story, and I'm so glad I'm able to share this because I think I think people don't really see these stories, right? But for Jackson, I actually I knew the manager for quite some time.
Uh huh.
When I was just shortly after my Sony Music period, and then so we knew the management for quite some time, and there was a XR or mixed reality concert that we wanted to do with him. Long story short, it didn't happen, and I think personally, I felt like I owe one to the manager. And then it just so happens that when I joined Riot, the World's Championships was happening, and they needed Chinese representation. And I thought, okay, I think this is a good opportunity for me to pay back, Jackson and his manager for me slipping out on the prior opportunity. And that's how it came about. And then the next thing the manager had a sit down, coffee with my boss at the time, Maria Egan, who's the global head of music and events at
Hmm.
Riot, and then the rest was history. With Amber, it was also through Jackson's management, just to kind of show you how small the world is. And then and in her case, like she was actually a fan of the Valorant game, right? She's actually rank. She's gold level player, and uh, and so she was able to kind of speak to the games. She was able to speak to the map and to the new heroes that are being coming out of the game, and it's that authenticity that made things really really easy. It made a really easy sell, internally.
What is your take on virtual idols like Seraphine?
Seraphine. So
Seraphine,
yeah,
excuse me.
uh, I personally enjoy a lot in being able to be the I don't know, whatever you call it, like the father or the godfather of Seraphine as his creative director, because I think that's where I enjoy doing creative work, and through that experience, we were able to like work with the story writers to create an arc, work with like various A&R executives to pick out the songs for her.
Hmm.
I think there's so much more potential with her. I mean, I can't speak to it now because I'm no longer at Riot, but we put that project on freeze, so we don't know whether it will ever come out. But we did a lot of creative work on what would be her like second album, I guess, like second, yeah, or some sort of comeback. We shall see. We shall see. I don't know whether will any of those materials come out, but it was very. I enjoyed every minute of it, and there was some really, really good songs, that came out of that experience.
How do you match music to Valorant, like
Yeah.
with Undefeated and Renegade?
At Riot, there is so there's the two main brands are League of Legends and Valorant, right? Both
Yeah.
they each of them have got different sonic identities, right? So with League of Legends, it's a 15-year-old plus franchise.
Hmm.
The songs tend to be very like big anthem, and then we tend to work with big artists. With Valorant, it was more like emerging, more street culture. So we're actually willing to work with developing artists in that sense. So with Renegade, it was a theme song for the Chinese agent inside the game. So it's naturally fitting that we find Chinese, and in this case, the Chinese rapper 99 God as the featuring artist for the theme song. And then with Undefeated, our strategic approach is that we wanted a music act that will serve both the Japanese fans and the Korean fans, and
Hmm.
XG fits quite nicely in that nexus, right? So yeah, I would say creative briefing first and foremost, but we will also take into consideration of where are the fans, and who do we want to serve to
Hmm.
influence our A&R and casting decisions.
Got it. Let's talk about Sway. What are you excited most about? What projects that that you're
Yeah, no,
really excited about?
thanks for asking, Bob. I think why I created Sway is because I've just really enjoyed all these
Hmm.
music supervision and music video work,
Yeah.
and again I have this vision that music being such an important sense out of all our senses,
Correct.
music should really be just as is important for films to have music to convey an emotion and convey mood.
Correct.
Games also need to do the same, because not only are we seeing that some home markets are now getting saturated, game markets, game or games in particular need to find ways to differentiate themselves. And if you don't even at least try to explore music to kind of move your players, then like just as what the likes of like Riot and Activision Blizzard have done, then I think there is a big missed opportunity there. So yeah, at Sway, basically we're taking the Riot playbook and we're offering that to other AA and AAA gaming studios that want to improve their music partnerships.
Amazing. Eric, you've been in the music business. You've been in the gaming. You are in the gaming business and the music business, both. So you have really a very unique experience and knowledge. And I would say a crystal ball. You see, I mean, you witnessed the transition from physical to digital back in the early 2000s. And I see, and we all see, but you probably have a different vision on things, that a new era going to emerge soon. or it's emerging, but maybe still underground or emerging through the video gaming. How are we going to consume content? The way we know it after we lost our, the old fashioned way where it's cassettes and CDs and vinyl and buying the hardware technology, you plug them in and you listen to music and all of that. Came to, download and streaming. What do you see the future of content consumption? Because whatever the music, the way we consume content, which is audio, it's going to be the way we're going to consume visual, which is movies and all of that. And what dictated that? Obviously, the way we communicate. Our communication devices became the leading factor of how do we consume content. What do you foresee in the future? And we all know it's coming, and we started to see things. And I know the gaming industry is one of the leading, I would say, tools at how are we going to consume content, because a lot of the young people, they tired
Yeah,
of the same old way. They want experience. So
yeah,
please, I don't want to get in, keep, widen the question, but you know exactly what I'm trying to get to.
yeah. I think my personal take on this is that maybe let's kind of split up like this, like songs, or the music industry and like the gaming side. You know, I think I've been in the industry for like almost, I guess, almost 3 decades now. I think that the platform, or the way the consumption, like, has changed, right? Like, I've noticed it went from CDs to iTunes download and now streaming. So I think there will always be, like, there's probably some kind of new form of streaming, like that's like, waiting around the corner, right? But I think a good song is always a good song.
Yes.
You will always, like, I still have my same Eric Clapton playlist. Like, it just went from cassettes to CDs to now a Spotify playlist, right? But I still listen to the same, BB King and Eric Clapton or John
Yeah.
Mayer catalog, in my spare time. So, like, a good song will always outlive the platform. That's my personal take. What is
Mm.
different, though, is the kind of promotion conduit, right? I think in the past it's like radio, TV. And now, like, if I look at my, the behavior of my, like, 7-year-old, for example, their first kind of exposure to any kind of pop culture is like Roblox and YouTube, right? So I think it's the platforms will continually change, but I think good content, evergreen content, will always have a place to live.
Interesting. Um, Looking back at your journey, what advice you would have for someone starting out in the music industry?
I'm trying not to give everything, anything generic, but having kind of like, had some ups and downs. I would say, try everything on your 20s, and I mean, like, try everything on your 20s, right? Like, don't get boxing into like a particular discipline just yet. Try a little bit of marketing, try a little bit of A&R, try a little bit of marketing, try a little bit of finance, and then you probably, hopefully you can hone in on your discipline, in your
Hmm.
30s. That said, I'm 40. I'm 45 this year, and I'm still learning new skills. Right, like, I'm
Well,
still
you know what
learning
they
new
say:
skills.
the new is the new 20s. So you're in your 20s, buddy.
I love that. I love that. And I'm still, like, to this day, I'm still learning new things from music production. I'm still learning new things, like, in sales and, in business. So I think it's never too late. But yeah, I think you probably can get ahead of everyone if you kind of, if you be adventurous in your 20s and then you hone in somewhat in your 30s. Yeah.
And technology has been really on a race right now, as you see. Every day,
So
new
fast,
tools, isn't
so
it? I never
fast.
seen it that fast. I really never seen it that fast. It's like, what is next? What is next? Unbelievable. Eric, before we wrap up this interesting, informative, definitely informative interview, is there anything you'd like to share with us and our viewers on listeners or on Soundbreaker, and anything that upcoming project you want to mention?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, Sway is really set up to help, double A or triple A game studios to help them solve any needs that they have on music supervision and the related business affairs and label marketing side. I can't reveal that much right now, but, I'm working with a Southeast Asia promoter, that has good coverage in the likes of Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam,
Mm.
in bringing kind of more Korean K-pop culture into the region. So I'm also working on that as well. So yeah, no, hope to be able to share more in the coming months. In the meantime, yeah, no, feel hopefully the listeners will monitor what I'm doing on LinkedIn, and also like with Sway, because we're very, very passionate about all things in the intersection of music and gaming.
Amazing. Well, I'm glad we finally got to do this amazing interview with you, Eric, with your busy schedule and world traveler that you are. I want to thank you so much for joining us today on Soundbreaker. And this concludes our episode for today. Please make sure to follow us on socials and stay tuned to our next episode. And thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share the Soundbreaker podcast. And if you are joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.